Hello there. Back from Auto Assembly 2014 in my Auto Assembly 2014 hat. Which is an awesome hat. I wish I had worn it more over the weekend. And took a full day to recover. Just from general tiredness, really. I was asleep well into the afternoon today on the Tuesday. But fully fresh and refreshed now to talk about my experiences on the weekend, which were mostly pretty good. Generally a pretty smoothly ran event this year. I think every scheduled panel or party started at pretty much exactly the time it was supposed to, which was a first in my experience, because the schedule is usually an elaborate work of fiction for Auto Assembly, where the only thing you can guarantee is none of the events will start at the time they're written on it. So that was quite nice. I think for a few people, the fact the paper schedules weren't given out with the pack you collected when you got your badge was a problem for a few people. Luckily I downloaded the email schedule, so I had that on my phone, but for people who either didn't have the right sort of phone or hadn't realised that, they did have trouble finding out what was on where. But overall, in terms of organisation, it went very well. You could feel there was that Flint Dilly shaped hole in the planned schedule. Sort of the amount of battles felt slightly sparse compared to previous years, and I assume if Flint Dilly had made it, there would have been a panel about the cartoon, and there would have been a panel about the IDW stuff. I suspect there would have been a panel with him on the Friday as well, before the screening of the film, because that's something that's a bit of a tradition, to have a 1986 film related thing before they show it. Panels themselves weren't the main draw for me this year, to be honest. All the voice actors were extremely nice people when I met them. Peter Spellos was the big hit of the convention. He was talking to anybody and everybody. He was giving out his personal email address to aspiring actors so they could contact him for advice and things like that. And with the panels, so having done a few of these now, most of the actors' anecdotes are basically the same, at least in terms of making the show. So generally you just get more, if you've been to this sort of thing before, you get more talking to them personally at their desk or at the bar than perhaps you do listening to the panel. Of course, all that is good for new people, the people who haven't been there before, or have a specific interest in those actors and the process. But generally I didn't bother with the actor panels this year. The other panels, the Friday night one I thought was the best. It was just genuinely, emotionally moving. It actively touched me, welling up a bit, as all these people who were basically just like me. You know, they perhaps not always the happiest of childhoods, but people who been brought together and found a community of fans through the comic or the cartoon, or just playing with the toys in the playground. That sense of community, but it had such a positive effect on the lives of, not just the people doing the panel who have found a career that actually pays at least somebody out of this hobby and fandom that they started in, but I think out of just about pretty much everybody in that hall has gained something far, far more out of Transformers than just toys or comics or cartoons. And that sort of became a big thing of this year for me, because there were an awful lot of people from the main forum I posted on this year for really the first time, so there was a big table full of us. And the event just became about sitting around a table at the bar and talking. And talking. On the Sunday night, I and the last remaining person who, all the others had gone, had to leave by that point, myself and Ryan F, were sat there talking till 3 or 4 o'clock on a Monday morning. And that sort of sums up the entire convention. Even into the purchases, I bought very little official merchandise this year. Mainly, it was fan stuff. I use fan in slightly inverted commas because some of it were things that were being sold by the professionals, but it was stuff that they had made themselves to sell. It wasn't licensed or endorsed by Hasbro, of which the main ones by actual creators were another James Roberts script, this time for Little Voices, the last issue of season 22 with More Than Meets the Eye. Again, as in his previous years, heavily annotated, all sorts of facts and data and interesting stuff in there. Including the fact that when he wrote this, the idea was Thunderclash was going to be a major part of Dark Cybertron instead of the Minicons. Who wouldn't want to read that version of Dark Cybertron where Thunderclash just comes in and saves everything at the end? I mean, he doesn't say what they were planning for Thunderclash to do, but that is what I'm going to imagine he would have done if he had been in that comic. It's perhaps not quite as interesting as the scripts he sold for the last 2 years, because that was Chaos Theory and issue 6, which were both his first solo strip for IDW, and an issue that was very early on in the run. So there were more differences between sort of the early drafts and pitches he made for those stories and the final result that there is in this case, which sort of comes at the climax of sort of the year where things have become a little more solidified. He's a little more sure of what he's doing, so there's less drastic reinvention as he's going along. But it's still a very interesting read in and of itself. Also, that this year's Nick Roach. This is very well organised, isn't it? I should really have put these things where I wasn't going to have to turn around for the camera every time I reach for one. This year's Nick Roach print, which sadly I couldn't stop getting a bit battered on the train, which is a shame, but it's still very, very nice. And I was quite excited when I saw that Fortress Maximus was on here with the Season 2 cast. And I did say to Nick, do you know something we don't? Is he going to be coming back? Is that a thing? And he said, no, I just wanted to draw Fortress Maximus. So that was quite amusing. And from the people who haven't done any official work, recently at least, Chris Carter's Fab Bumbish book, charity book as well, collected his online comic stories, which is very... Well, this probably is the best advert for your book, Chris. Sorry about that, but very nicely put together. And looks great. It's a very good, solid read. You can see why he went on to do official work for IDW, and why it's a shame he hasn't been used for a while. I believe they only ever used it for colours as well. And between this and things like Loose Cannon, he's a very talented artist, so it would be nice at some point in the future to see him draw an issue for IDW again. And from the redoubtable and brilliant Andrew Turnbull, there are two things. This year's collection of Daily Straxus, yay, which is hilarious as ever. Oddly enough, I read all when he was doing these online at the time, but most of it had slipped from my memory as in a year or a couple of years since they first went out. It read as a very fresh comedy experience, and I laughed at all the jokes again. It absolutely appealed to my slightly silly sense of humour. But more seriously, he also did the first of what will hopefully be 2 instalments of a comic adaptation of Another Time and Place from the last annual. And it's very nice. It's an interesting approach, because obviously that's a very being a text story, amazingly. It's very heavy in text. But he has took the approach that apparently, according to his afterward, is taken from the recent comic adaptation of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, where he has every word of the text of the story in the comic. And that sounds like the sort of thing that shouldn't work, and I don't know if it worked with Blade Runner. Yeah, it's Blade Runner, that's just what we all call it, comic. But here it absolutely flows fantastically. Top-notch read, real labour of love. Absolutely looking forward to the second part there. And I believe both Andy's books and Chris's are available to buy online. If you have a quick Google, they are well worth looking into and picking up. The Chris Carter book, I believe, did have a very limited small print run, so it is possible he could have sold out of that. But if there are any left, absolutely go for it. Also, this year's convention comic. Actually, no, now I think of it, I didn't see any copies of the Cybertron Times with Starscream cutting the cake anywhere. I don't know if that sold out very quickly or if something happened to stop that being published. But this comic, they've set the bar very high the last couple of years, actually, with some brilliant comics. And this isn't up to that same level. But maybe I'm just biased because I like the movies, and there's a bit of a dig of movies at the start here. But it's a bit more of a mishmash of sort of flinging all continuities into it for a bit of fun. Well, the last couple of years, the comics have had sort of nicely focused linear stories that I thought works really well. But, this is something he got 3 when he came in. It's still pretty good throwaway fun, and it looks very nice as well. There's some good art in here. But, this isn't an unofficial fan product, but it's not Transformers. I picked up Monster Motors from Nick Roach, which is a great kids comic. Again, it appeals to my very silly sense of humour. It's fun, it flows well, it looks great. I've not read any, is it Brian Lynch? I nearly called him Barry there. I've not read any Brian Lynch written stuff before, but that is great fun. So again, it's recommended to anybody, but I think I came from Artie a bit late with that one. I suspect just about everybody else has a copy of it. But fan-orientated stuff didn't just extend to comics and posters. It was also a bit of a year for third-party toys. Everybody seems to be picking them up, possibly inspired by the third-party panel as well. I got Iron Fist. He's lovely. Beautiful Iron Fist. He looks great. He's got a perfect expression. Looks great. You can stand him so he's looking up in Idol at Springer or Roadbuster. It's a lovely little toy. And I got the box signed by both James and Nick as well. Both of whom said exactly the same thing. It's more than Hasbro have done. With a little tear running down their faces at the same time. But very pleased with that. The other fan toy I got, which was expensive, I wasn't sure about it, but Stuart Denyer persuaded me, he said it was worth it. And he was right. The third-party Fortress Maximus and his massive gun. This is a convention exclusive, though I don't think it was exclusive for this convention. Brave Maximus repaint of it. But yeah, it's IDW Fortress Maximus. I like to imagine he's in different colours because the last time we saw him, it was a prose story. So he obviously repainted himself in order to celebrate becoming the duly appointed enforcer of the Tyrest Accord. Yeah, obvious really. But he's got this massive gun, this massive backpack. He stands up perfectly, without his stand. Poseable, dynamic, he's got a real weight and heft to him. The alt modes are rubbish. To be honest, tank is just a square. But it looks, once you put all the extra bits you've got to plug onto it, it looks okay. And the head mode is only really any interest unless you have an original Fortress Maximus. But overall, that was well worth it. Nope. Laying down gently, I'll stand him up properly later. The other convention toys I got, which I haven't been bothered to get out to show in this video, were the convention exclusive Mario and Luigi repaints of Pipes and Huffer. Last year's convention exclusive third-party repaints for Jumpstarters were brilliant in every possible way. Sadly, this was the same people, indeed the same people who did Iron Fist. The Mario and Luigi, well, the working from animated design, they didn't really turn into anything anyway, so the alt mode was always going to look terrible. But that's just true of the Jumpstarters, so that the robot mode still works. Robot modes, these two look okay, well, they look fun actually if they're standing there posing, but they don't feel as if they're made of as good a plastic as the Jumpstarters were. The posability's poor. Bit of a disappointment, those. The box was absolutely brilliant, but yeah, maybe they should have spent less time on the box and more time on the toys in the box. So that's sort of what AA was this year generally, for fan stuff, unofficial stuff. Selling of the official toys and products was a bit underwhelming. I think if you come specifically to shop for toys, that's an area you would have been disappointed in this year. A lot of the same stuff. Everybody had dozens upon dozens upon dozens of Jetfires that nobody wanted. Some of the price seems a bit dodgy. New toys of the same class at different prices, presumably based on the popularity of a character. So Scoop, who we all hate because of Dark Cybertron, was £5 cheaper than Rat Trap, who we only mildly hate because of Dark Cybertron. Also, some companies put their prices up on the more popular toys on the Sunday. I think Kapow did that with whatever tailgates they had. They slapped an extra £5 on in. Others may have did it as well. With similar items. That was a bit piss poor. And I think a lot of dealers would have had a lot of stock to take back with them on the Sunday night, to be honest. But no, toys aren't particularly hugely what I go there for, so that didn't bother me too much generally, and I think I got a good deal on most of what I brought. In terms of official toys, I got a Roadbuster, who is lovely, and Generation 2 Sideswipe. I wasn't going to double dip on the Masterpiece moulds. Not only did I double dip, it was a toy of a character I'd already got a Masterpiece of, but he just looks so gorgeous, and he has with the guns, and I think he's the only one of the Masterpiece toys who look remotely good with the guns plugged into his roof, because that is G2 perfectly. Saturday night schedule. The band. Did anybody stay and see the band? Nobody I spoke to did. Me and the people I were with, we all went to the bar instead. I didn't speak to anybody all weekend who actually stayed and watched them. And that raises a philosophical question. If a band plays The Touch and nobody hears it, do they exist? They may have been a great band. I'll never know. But overall, Saturday night perhaps wasn't as good as some of the previous years. The cosplay competition was fun, especially Brainstorm with what was in her suitcase. A briefcase, rather. Suitcase might be silly if it was a suitcase. But it was hard. When I had so many people there, it was hard to see from where we were sitting. The costumes with the TV screen not quite working properly in terms of showing them off. With a move to a bigger room next year with even more people in it, they'll need to think about something to make it easy to see what's going up on the front maybe a stage to stand on or something, I'm not sure. One piece of advice for all cosplay players, if that's the correct word. When you're making a costume, think about how you're going to walk in it. Several of the cosplayers seem to cripple themselves walking the length of the hall to the presentation area as well. Script reading, people are aware weren't too keen on it. I didn't mind it because it was silly and it was just obvious jokes mostly, but it's designed to appeal to a room full of drunken people, so that's what it needed to be, really. I wasn't sure about all that Traxxas gay stuff. I felt like it came from a 1970s sitcom and did verge, if not on the offensive, but at least for very stereotypical. I did miss the start of that. Maybe there was some sort of context in which it worked, which is entirely possible. None of the people I were with, again, none of them thought that was the case, so maybe not, but that felt like it didn't really work at all, that element of it. But basically Saturday night was, we all sat in the bar. That was the evening, and it was fun and communal. It wasn't just for TFR kind of people, it was getting down to go over and say hi to Chris Carter, stopping a few people who've heard of podcasts and say, hey, you do good podcasts. Very brief chat with Chris McFeely. Every year, Chris McFeely and I say to each other beforehand, we will have a proper conversation this year at some point, and every year, neither one of us can manage it because we're both so busy. It was good to have at least a couple of words with him, and a few other people as well, including somebody I hadn't seen in 10 years, since 2004. Also Assembly, who remembered me, which was pleasant and surprising. But they were also a fan of these videos, so that was quite nice. We did a few people who have watched these. Though, again, Stuart Denyer suggested to me that he thinks my videos are so good, I should do podcasts instead. If you would rather this were a podcast, just close your eyes and listen to my voice. Yeah, close your eyes, that's it, yes. Now it's like a podcast. So that was all fun, and really that absolutely made the entire weekend for me, and it felt so full as well, because it was much more social people to meet up with than usual. Normally I will read the convention comic, James Roberts scripts, and whatever else I've picked up, I will read that over the course of the weekend, either when I'm at the bar, having some lunch, or if I go up to my room for a bit, and I'll have the time to fiddle with the toys as well. There was basically no time for any of that this year. I didn't get to read anything until I was on the train on the way back. I didn't get to play with anything other than Iron Fist until I got home. It was a very, very full weekend just from that. So that was what made it. The bar, also this year, the big problem last year was the Hilton not having enough staff on to cope with everybody. That did seem to be the problem this year. You still had to queue for a little while, but it felt like the sort of queue you would expect as a busy bar, not the slightly more ludicrous waiting times for both that and breakfast last year. So that was definitely an improvement. In terms of what things that can be done better next year, sound system wasn't particularly good this year. It was hard to make out what people were saying sometimes. And apparently the guests couldn't hear the questions a lot of the time either. So that's definitely something that's going to be improved upon. I can understand why they have the guest talks at the dealer's room in the same room, because back in 2004 they tried having it in different rooms and it was a disaster for the dealers. They basically made no money that weekend. But I think that hotel back then put the dealer's room 10 floors higher than the main conference room, so might be time to try that again, or at least work out the sound a bit better for the new bigger room it's going to be in next year. But other than that, I just thought it ran very smoothly. I I'm never even back next year. I'm there every year. Other random highlights, getting to see the Japanese trade paperback collection of Marvel BTI, getting to hold UK Classics Volume 5. But apparently it's out in shops now if you're lucky enough to find a copy, because somebody bought it themselves. They had lent it to James Roberts, so I don't think he hadn't seen a copy of it yet. He was in awe, as much of awe of it as I was when I saw it. I'm talking also to James. Yeah, I call him James. It's like he's my friend. About the thing in October with Bob Budiansky, and us just both geeking out about the fact that, hopefully, unless something horrible happens to me in the meantime, we'll be meeting Bob Budiansky. How awesome is that going to be? I certainly something to look forward to in a couple of months. Very drunkenly at the end of the Sunday night, when I was saying goodbye to Chris Carter as I left to go to my room, I also had a nice little jokey chat with Nick Roach about the awesomeness of his hair. But I think in retrospect may have just been, from his point of view, a very drunken man he doesn't know very well coming up and mocking his hair. Hopefully he won't be violent towards me next year for that. But there's just lots of nice little moments like that. And my main regret is not going to the Alex Milne art class panel, because I'm not an artist, I don't think that'd be of interest to me, but apparently he was coming out with some absolutely interesting stories about his various creative disagreements with different people at IDW over the years, which I should stress, not destructive creative differences, in that he has had some big doubts for why it has to be sorted out by editorial debates with James Roberts and Joss Burkham, but all born out of everybody wanting to make the best book they possibly can, and all without any seeming ill will, because him and James won't sit next to each other on a panel without killing each other, so obviously they get on pretty well. That would have been interesting to hear that directly rather than second hand. Maybe I would. The other minus point is I think it would have been nice, but Livio Ramondelli of a Marvel BTI panel, because thanks to Flint Dille having to drop out, that meant he didn't really get a panel all weekend as a result. And because he's worked on Marvel BTI, and I think he might have actually worked on more issues in the last year than Alex Milne has, thanks to Dark Cybertron. But I'm not sure about that. That's something for the fact fans out there to check. So we could have joined in that, and because James Roberts was carrying a lot of that panel, because Alex Milne is a sort of very taciturn man, and Joanna LaFente seemed a bit overwhelmed by the whole thing, understandably, if you've not been to one of these before. So she was very quiet as well, but Livio was very bubbly and chatty all weekend, so he could have given James a chance to rest his voice on that one. But yeah, overall, no real complaints other than niggly stuff. Very relaxed weekend, felt like a worthy 30th anniversary convention, just on the social side, just through being reminded of what it is that Transformers has done in bringing all these disparate people from all different parts of the country, all different parts of the world, bringing them together, putting them in a pub, giving them some alcohol, and having them talk to one another. There is no better celebration of Transformers than that. And on that, I will close over this, again, very rambling video. My next one will probably be on the Tom Baker era of Doctor Who, and hopefully, coming out of this convention, there will be something special coming up on my website for transformation in a few weeks, depending on how well it works out and how quickly I can get the written side of it together. So do watch out for that. Oh yes, cryptic foreshadowing. And for everyone who's at Auto Assembly, I hope you'll be there next year. 31st anniversary, hard to make as much of a fuss over that, but let's do it anyway. Yeah, for next year's 30 years of original British Transformers comic stories. Now that will be worth a celebration as well. Now yeah, that is what Auto Assembly 2015 will be. If they have the sense to listen to a man in a hat. See you next year.